I'm joined now by Senator Elizabeth Warren. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you this morning.
So, after a huge night, a big blue wave night in yesterday's election, I have to ask first and foremost, how are Senate Democrats thinking about the ongoing shutdown? Obviously, there was a lot of pressure on everybody on both sides in the lead up to this election, but after seeing such a resounding victory for Democrats, how are you all thinking about the ongoing shutdown and fighting to protect affordable health care?
Well, there was a lot of validation last night in the sense that a reminder people care about affordability. Uh, that's what the race in New York City was all about. That's what the race in Virginia was all about. That's what the race was all about in New Jersey.
Yeah,
And that's what this fight is about, whether or not people are going to be able to afford health care.
right.
So I see this as a kind of a moment when this fight that we've been having in the Senate and, dragged in to vote over and over and over, as they try to turn up the pressure and try to tag the Democrats, it's your fault that government is shut down. That the fact that we said, no, we know what we're fighting for. We are fighting for access to health care for millions of families across this country, that helped provide some runway to the candidates who are out there talking, like Zoran is out there talking, like Abigail's out there talking, like Mikey was out there talking about affordability in their city and in their states. So to me, it's a moment of watching it all come together with the American people.
I want to draw your attention to Donald Trump's comments this morning, obviously in the aftermath of the election and before his breakfast with Senate Republicans. He said, quote, "I thought we'd have a discussion after the press leaves about what last night represented and what we should do about it, and also about the shutdown, how that relates to last night. I think if you read the pollsters, the shutdown was a big factor, negative for Republicans." And so what do you anticipate, or what have you heard from any Republican colleagues, if any, about the prospect of this shutdown continuing further? Or do you think that you're going to see Republicans come to the table and ask for a deal to extend those ACA subsidies so that healthcare doesn't become as unaffordable as Republicans are trying to make it become?
So look, we've always known that there was going to be a deal exactly at the moment when Donald Trump told the spineless Republicans, go do a deal.
Right.
It was not going to happen
But
before.
not until then.
That's right. It was not going to happen before then. And the minute he says it, it will happen. And so I see the comments, it's just like it was before. And that is the Republicans, they look around and know what's going on. They're getting the phone calls in their offices. They know how much the American people, including, by the way, the majority of Republicans, want these cuts restored so that people can afford their health insurance. They know all that. They're just more afraid of Donald Trump than they are interested in representing their own constituents. And so Donald Trump may be telling them, hey, as we're speeding along this highway, there may be an exit ramp coming up here. And the minute he tells them that, we'll be ready to go and sit down and negotiate a deal. Remember, we're still sitting here waiting literally for the first negotiating session. So
Right.
far, Republicans, zero, have not been willing to negotiate.
Do you think that their strategy of demanding a clean continuing resolution, a clean CR, so that they can get the government reopened, and only after Senate Democrats have relinquished all of their leverage, then they promise to sit down at the negotiating table and restore cuts that they made at the hands of a party that has been nothing if not hostile to healthcare, that cut ACA subsidies, that cut Medicaid, that cut $1 trillion in their latest budget? Do you think that that whole gambit kind of just fell flat, and that Americans are smarter than Republicans had given them credit
Yeah.
for?
Not only did that gambit fall flat, the whole damn gambit was insulting.
Yeah.
I mean, it just really said that they had no respect for what was going on in people's lives. That they understood that millions of people were going to be kicked off their health care coverage. They understood that millions more were going to pay double and triple what they had been paying. But they not only didn't care, they didn't think that there were going to be any consequences from that. And to me, that's what last night was all about. It said, oh, yeah, the American people are a lot smarter than the Republicans have been giving them credit for.
No, I don't want to ask you to play pundit here, but it doesn't seem to
Good, because
me
I'm not very good at it.
it doesn't seem to me that Donald Trump, knowing what we know about Donald Trump, that he's going to just come out and say, you know what, we were wrong, let's completely change course. In fact, I can't remember a time where he said, I was wrong, let's completely change course. And so in this scenario, where clearly something's got to give, how do you presume they're going to navigate this road where you've got a guy for whom nothing is more important than protecting his own fragile ego, and yet at the same time, if this election was a referendum on how the Republicans are comporting themselves, something's definitely got to give. Otherwise, they're in for a really, really rude awakening, just like we saw last night as we head toward 2026.
Oh, come on, sweetheart. You asked the question like Donald Trump is tied to logic or
Yeah,
reality. Look, he's going to bend reality. Whatever happens, Donald Trump is going to declare victory.
right.
And at the end of the day, as between having Donald Trump admit that he was wrong and getting healthcare coverage for tens of millions of people, I'm kind of going with the healthcare
Sure.
coverage.
Yeah.
I
Let him
don't
let him let him let him massage his own ego for a few
exactly
seconds, and yeah.
exactly.
To that end, can I have your reaction to the fact that in the immediate aftermath of these returns starting to come in, he took to Truth Social and said Trump wasn't on the ballot and shutdown were the two reasons that Republicans lost elections tonight. And so what does it say that even after an election cycle that was very clearly a referendum on him, that the notion that any Republican has moved away from Donald Trump or has presented themselves as anything other than an appendage of Donald Trump is laughable. And so this idea that Trump wasn't on the ballot and that's why Republicans lost, like, can I just have your general reaction to that?
Yeah, well, Donald Trump tries to bend reality, but this is one reality that just ain't going to bend. And that is, we all know Donald Trump was on the ballot last night. And he was not only on the ballot in New York City, shoot, he inserted himself into that race. On the ballot in Virginia, where you have particularly all of those federal workers who've been fired in this, or he's tried to fire in the shutdown, and those who have been furloughed. And in New Jersey, where he cut off the tunnel between New York and New Jersey, right? I mean, the tunnel funding. But he also was on the ballot out in California, right? He also was on the ballot in Pennsylvania. Remember? Because Pennsylvania is about the recall election, so that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court knuckles under to Donald Trump. And pretty resoundingly, the people of Pennsylvania said, we need constraints on Donald Trump. That's what Pennsylvania was about. That's what California was about. And look at what happened down in Georgia. Um, Donald Trump is working hard to make the whole affiliation with being a Republican as toxic as he possibly can. But he's so wrapped up in his alternative reality of how great and powerful the wonderful Trump is that he just keeps right on going. The part I find more interesting, I mean, I'm not interested in taking him, trying to figure out Donald Trump. It's the Republicans who keep going along with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the Republicans that I look at in the Senate here every day who understand what's happening back home in their states, who are hearing from people, who are having people walk up to them in the airports and, when they're out on sidewalks, and that they still are too spineless to stand up to Donald Trump. They're still bowing down. To me, I just stop and ask the question, you really want to be a senator that bad? That's the only way you can do this. I just don't get it. But I think it's worth watching. But right now, Donald Trump seems to be saying there's got to be an off ramp here, and we got to get government open and ready to go if you'll restore healthcare cuts for millions of Americans. That's what this fight is all about.
There were a few Democratic senators who were willing to defect over to Republicans in terms of getting this shutdown ended without the assurance of the extension of those Affordable Care Act subsidies. Do you think this changes the calculus for those Democratic senators, bolsters their position in saying, look how many Americans showed up for a Democratic Party that is right now fighting, and so there is really no incentive to defect to the Republican Party after they just got resoundingly shut down?
I have to say, I can only speak for myself, but at the end of the day, nobody signed on. We're still in this fight for healthcare, and we're still together as a caucus saying we are going to get better healthcare coverage for Americans. That's why we got into this fight. We are the party that is going to help lower costs for Americans. And that's on healthcare, and it's on utilities, and it's on groceries, and it's on childcare, and it's on housing. We're in this fight together on this. And I think last night was just a real reminder of how much hunger there is for that in the United States. And Democrats are in the fight and demonstrating we can deliver. We got to do it.
Perfectly put. We'll leave it there. Senator Warren, thanks so much for your time.
Always good to be with you.